There we go.
Okay. And it works.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Clearly, the book is about our former Jean Drapeau, who was nicknamed Monsieur Montreal, and rightly so. As I put together the book, I had been very hard on Jean Drapeau during the Olympics and before and after, but I gained a terrific respect for the man. He really was something special. There was so much crookedness going on around him, but he wasn't. It was just he was being manipulated by unions and people who were far too rich and that sort of. So anyway, but first I'd like to say, Happy St. Patrick's Day. I was a little belated, but I love St. Patrick's week in Montreal. It's actually almost the beginning of spring, right? And it was a bonus the other day when the Habs beat Boston on St. Patrick's Day. And let me remind you, of course, that the parade is coming up this coming Sunday. Just watch your step, right? I grew up, anybody know what they're doing with St. Stephen's Church down here? What are they doing?
Condos.
Oh, geez, really? Well, okay, maybe I'll get one. I was baptized in that church. I lived in the neighborhood in the 50s as a child, and I discovered the Atwater Library. Also, the Forum, became a huge Habs fan. Hold on, can I do this without? There you go. And so on. So I loved. Oops. What did I do? Jason, why don't you sit up here? In fact, you want to give the talk? Poor guy slipped on the ice the other day.
Okay, give me a second.
What am I doing?
You press on this button.
Oh, there we are.
You want to stick to this one.
All right, I'll do that. Okay, good. I've got my instructions. You were making sure. Okay, I lived in a back alleyway off Lincoln Avenue with my parents. It was the happiest period of my life because with the Forum, the Atwater Library, St. Stephen's Church, gangs roaming around. It was wonderful. And this is a sketch, actually, of this sort of converted garage where we lived. And John Little, the great painter, lived below us. And so he did this sketch of the kids playing hockey in front of the, and my dad ordering beer, and stuff like that. My mom in the window. And it's sort of a prized possession. At the same time, as I said, I was crazy about sports. John did this wonderful sketch of me playing for the St. Matthew Street White Sox. They made me the captain of the team, not because I was that good, but I was good at razzing the other players. So I was learning early. And so I've always loved sports. When I first started cartooning, I was doing cartoons for Saturday Night Magazine in 1967. And I went in, saw the art director there, and he said, "We need caricatures of Lyndon Johnson and a couple of other politicians." I said, "I know nothing about politics." He said, "It's a piece of cake. Don't worry about it. Just make them look stupid and it'll be fine." Best bit of advice I ever got. So, in any case, but it was, I took it's interesting, I was a rascal, and my parents sent me for one of those tests, like to determine what you should be when you grow up. What are they called? Aptitude tests. And there were silly questions like, what color would you do if a giraffe it wasn't? I didn't understand it, but I just answered all these questions. And the results came back, and it said he should become either a photographer, I guess because of visual, or he should become a sports cartoonist. I kind of liked that. But again, I switched and became well known as a political cartoonist because of the advice that this fellow gave me. But anyway, the Gazette, when I joined the Gazette, they said, we want to send you to Moscow for the Canada-Russia hockey series. And I had a whale of a time. So as we were approaching it, I put out a book privately. In other words, we self-published of my memoirs of the 1972 Canada-Russia hockey series. There it is. And it was a great success. And I was advised on it by Yvan Cornouet, now a good friend of mine. And they even took that cover and turned it into a Canadian stamp. Did all right with that. So when we were starting to approach the 20th anniversary of the Expos in '74, I thought, I'll try the same thing, because I had covered the Expos with sports cartoons all during their career. So I came up with this book, and again got a good advisor on it, Roger Brulat, the columnist for Le Journal de Montreal and former broadcaster and so on. And he gave me some terrific advice on that. And then the book, again, was very, very successful. And we began selling them independently online. And as we approached the 50th anniversary of the Olympics, I had drawn sketches, a lot of sketches for the Gazette. I said, I'll issue a little booklet of my sketches that I did during the Olympics. But then as I researched it, it began to grow, and it turned into quite a project. And that what has become Jean Drapeau's baby. It's sort of a Montreal Olympics scrap, and I say a scrapbook because I include a lot of other cartoonists, photographers from the time, and really good people. They all gave me permission to use their work because they understood I was giving 20% of the profit to the Children's Hospital. Anyway, it was a joy to put this together. And again, Jean Drapeau, this growing respect for him, the only mayor of Montreal to have a statue erected to himself. And I went and I sat down there, and there he is, hands outstretched, welcome, in front of City Hall, even covered in snow, and watching the comings and goings at City Hall. I love that concept. In any case, during the Olympics, they got me a press, the Gazette said, we want to do something from the Montreal Star, different from the Montreal Star. The Montreal Star, of course, was the main paper at the time, English language paper. And the Gazette was scrappy. They sort of adopted that slogan of the time, we're number 2, but we try harder. And they did a terrific job on the Olympics, all kinds of people. Anyway, Brody Snyder, the sports editor, said, I'm going to get you a special pass that gets you into everything. And I want you to wander around the Olympics and not draw somebody finishing a race, but funny stuff you hear and see. And I did, and so that became, they were using them all over the place. They picked up around the world, too. So that was the press pass they got me at the time. Look a little scary there, I guess, but I looked less scary when my hair turned white. So I went down to the Olympic Stadium. We were all impressed with it at the time. That, by the way, is, but there's a lead up in the book to how the Olympics just didn't happen. So that's at his first press conference after he became mayor in 1960 for a second time. But it's a small place in some ways, Montreal, because the guy in front, behind the CFCF microphone is René Lévesque, interviewing him for Radio-Canada. So we're a tight community. He was so easy to draw. This is John Collins in the Gazette drawing Jean Drapeau when he got elected. And it's an egg, right? Big glasses and a scruffy little mustache. And anybody could draw him. You guys could draw him. And Ed McNally, a top cartoonist at the time, had him walking through a door, men at work. Well, he got to work, and suddenly, Drapeau could do no wrong in the 1960s. here he is sitting, Ed McNally again, sitting down, saying, they laughed when I sat down at the piano to play. But he's got plans for a metro, and he delivered. He delivered a metro. Place des Arts, his mother was an opera fan. And she hoped that he would build someplace where world performers could come and play, and it did, and it turned into really the cultural center when you think about it, because it began the comedy festival, all kinds of things began to happen in that area. Here's a sketch I did of Tony Bennett at Place des Arts, performing in 2004, I think. So it really worked. It became, and the skyline changed too. Anyway, next, and it's all complete in the book, he began running, he hadn't gone anywhere further than New Brunswick when he was 34. And suddenly, he's running all over the world, getting support for a world exhibition, which became, of course, Terre des Hommes and Expo 67. And it was, again, a wild success. My favorite cartoonist, Duncan McPherson, did a fold-out cover for Maclean's magazine on the World's Fair. That's the fold-out, and all of the events that took place. Ed Sullivan interviewed Jean Drapeau twice on his program. And there he is with Petula Clark and his wife. That's Petula on the other side, that's his wife. In any case, Ed Sullivan called him the greatest mayor in the world, impressed with what he had done. And, you know, he did, and 50 million people came, a lot of them Americans, because of Ed Sullivan. 50 million people came to Montreal. It may have been the high point, really, of his career. You know, we were becoming a world center, as he wanted. Beautiful posters for Expo 67. But then Charles de Gaulle came, a brief kind of interlude, a change of mood, and called for Vive le Québec libre and stuff. And Drapeau got past that, because he wanted world attention, but not this kind of attention. Anyway, he got past that. And then what does he do? He announces that Major League Baseball is coming to Montreal in 1969. And then the year after that, he announces, we have the Olympics, for God's sake. I mean, we were so proud of the city at the time. It was a magic time, wonderful time. At the Gazette, these are some of the characters I was working with at the Gazette. We hung out in a place called Mother Martin's that was right beside and that is the patient editor, Lindsay Chrysler, who went to Concordia and became a journalist editor. He was the editor, and the big guy is Brody Snyder. He was the sports editor. Extreme right-winger, and I was an extreme left-winger at the time. We got along famously because he understood the power of visuals. He was a great city editor. That's me, Barker, and a very good friend of mine, George Cree, who was the head of photography. So we decided, let's really cover the Olympics and get past the Montreal Star. We did. In any case, there were another fellow, Doug Gilbert. That was an advantage because he was a world expert on the Olympics. He wrote daily for the Gazette, and he was just a real expert. And you know, eventually he became chosen as a sports reporter of the year, I think, several years later. The problem is he was killed in an auto accident, but I think if he had lived, he would be remembered as one of our greatest sports editors. And I knew Doug, I got to know him, wandered around the Olympics with him. He had so many great observations. Okay, by then I've done a couple of pretty nasty cartoons of Jean Drapeau. But I didn't even notice, but he did. And he invited me and my two daughters down to City Hall. So here he is, buttering up my two daughters, presenting them with gifts and grapefruit juice and this, that, and the other. It didn't work. Because 2 weeks later, he said, the Olympics can no more have a deficit than a man can have a baby. And so I drew him as Henry Morgenthaler, calling Henry Morgenthaler. And it's become, I guess, the iconic caricature of Jean Drapeau. Nevertheless, during the event, they had beautiful artwork, you'll remember. That was Emick, I think. Yeah, I think that was, in any case. But I suggested maybe that mascot should look more like this. With his... So getting on with it, Duncan McPherson, the fellow, drew a beautiful cartoon that kind of summed it up. He's lighting the Olympic flame, and it's filled with buddy. And the labor people, I've got a lot of stuff in there about labor, how that stuff, I mean, they got a terrific deal out of the city saying trucks will show up at such a time, we'll pay something like $800 a year a day to truck drivers, but they weren't ready. But the truck drivers showed up anyway, empty, left empty, and got their $800 a day. So suddenly cracks were appearing in this whole project. But he pulled it off. Here I have him pulling a hat out of a rabbit. I mean, it was a miracle. He actually pulled it off. So I started to go down with a simple sketchbook, and then McCord has an exhibition, by the way, starting next week on the Olympics. It's going to be a big thing. Go and visit it. It's terrific. But they now in the collection, they have my sketchbooks from the Olympics. And how it would start was, because it had to be fast, just a simple sketch like that of a situation I saw, an arrogant German trying to deal with the staff or vice versa. And then I would go back to the Gazette and draw a finished drawing like that. How do you say kiss off in German? And then, of course, the two huge stars, Nadja and Alexia, the weightlifter. What a contrast. I love drawing that. I mean, two phenomenal athletes, and they look so different. It was just a lot of fun to draw. There's a sketch I did with Nadja, just a simple line drawing, because I was there when she performed her great things. Bruce Jenner, decathlon champion, 1976. But then I redrew it in 2015. Caitlyn Jenner, a transgender champion, 2015. Again, everybody's oohing and awing about the stadium, but I noticed nothing was finished, and the tower wasn't built yet, and that sort of thing. And the architect, already cement was starting to fall off onto the Roger Tavet's head. Sketches in Bromont, where the rich people lived. Queen Anne appeared, and there's a funny story about that in the book, but it's detailed. You have to buy the book to see read it. Security was great. Because of Munich, we really beefed up our security. So here a guy is saying, terribly sorry, sir, in the process of escorting the marathon, I seem to have won the bronze medal. This fellow, Greg Joy, on the last day of the Olympics, we finally won a major medal. He cleared the high jump and he won a silver. We were pretty happy about that. But the event people remember on the last day is not Greg Joy so much as the streaker. You remember that? Yeah. I mean, I love the reasoning for it too. Here he is, a photographer got this great shot of him streaking among all these confused women who were doing nice, pretty circle dances. Suddenly, this streaking. And they asked him later. He was a nice guy. They asked him, he said, "Why did you do that? Is there some political reason for you doing that?" He said, No, I'm from Montreal. I have a nice body. I just wanted to show it off. I mean, how Montreal is that? It's just wonderful. Nick Oftermore, of course, some of you will remember Nick, and he was a city councillor at this point, still a columnist for the Gazette, but he got along with the mayor like me, he got along with the mayor, and the mayor appreciated his humor and that sort of thing. But then he wrote a book, a real interesting book called The $1 Billion Game, an expose of all the stuff that had gone on. Another Anglo, Brian McKenna and his daughter, his wife, Susan Purcell, wrote a terrific biography. So we were still in there. We were still doing a lot of things on it. That was produced in 1980. If you can find it on the internet, it's a great, insightful book about the man. Drapeau, I won't get into it all, but Drapeau lasted another, however it was, until 1984, retired, and we were quite tearful about that. But then everybody was saying, well, we got to clean this up. So Jean Doré came in, like the workman, he's going to clean things up, but immediately hit a recession, established a bureaucracy that was impossible to deal with, and really we kicked him out. A couple of more, I go into details in the book on that. But then, because of the Olympic debt, work wasn't getting done on the roads in particular. And, it was costing so much money. So Gérald Tremblay was the guy who introduced the cone. And that continued. It created difficulties for all the mayors to follow. Denis Coderre showing up like Superman, right? He was going to save everything and solve everything, but then he fell into a pothole. And I had drawn him at the time as Fred Flintstone. And it caught on. And people say, why did you draw him as Fred Flintstone? I said, simple, he looks like Fred Flintstone. And he criticized dogs or something. And so I had a dog pissing on him and so on. But there he is, it's Fred Flintstone. And then at St. Patrick's Day, he was there, CJD were doing interviews. So there's the mayor and I. And he's smiling away. But then after the microphone was turned off, he said, Terry, I'm no fucking dinosaur, right? There you go. But he spent a lot of money, just like Jean Drapeau had. We kicked him out. Along comes Valérie Plante, charming woman, really always a smile, on her bicycle. She figured the bicycles were going to save us from all the traffic. Didn't work. We had COVID, and here she is trying to get her way around downtown. So these are repercussions of what happened because of the Olympics, right? And then now our current mayor stuck with the same problem. She said the other day that she was going to solve the cone problem with artificial intelligence. We'd be grateful for any form of intelligence. It was, and the stadium continues. They say, oh, we paid the Olympic debt in whenever it was. We didn't. $1 billion, to fix the hole in the roof. And La Presse called it, the nightmare. And it really was a nightmare. It terrified lots of us. Beautiful cover here for a magazine. Everybody terrified. And then here, Boris's cartoon, saying in effect, I wish somebody would put a roof over my head, a homeless guy. So it became a meme, really, for the cartoonists, all of this stuff on the Olympic Stadium, and continues to be so today. This is Y and Le Journal de Quebec on what are Montreal's two most popular symbols, the damn big O and an orange cone. Serge Chaplot, my good friend, suggested we sell the big saber for a Star Wars update or something. So we fed off this, and when we're feeding off something, it's probably bad for you. And this is an interesting story, and we're going to close kind of with this. Aaron Rand's a friend of mine, and he's a very popular broadcaster at CJD. He also does Corner Booth with Bill Brownstein. And we were doing a function together, and he said, you're doing a book on the Olympics. I said, yeah. He said, I played around with something. I played with artificial intelligence, but I just gave it prompts. Like I said, create me a stadium like the Olympic Stadium. Okay, they did that. And he said, turn the seats into room for the homeless. And he did that. And he said, put a park in the middle. Beautiful. And he can't draw. So this is kind of where we're going with a lot of our artificial intelligence. And I believe that actually it's going to unleash a lot of creativity, even for people who can't draw or something. By doing this, they can come up with wonderful satirical elements. And my favorite cartoon on the subject of providing homeless, this is by André Philippe Coté, the brilliant cartoonist at Le Soleil in Quebec City. And it's a fellow looking at a sign that's saying, a future site for social housing. And he said, what a great idea. She says, yeah, but the sign's been there for 20 years. Anyway, Jean Drapeau really was a great man. He was not crooked. He loved Montreal, as we all do. And I just got the greatest respect for what it is he tried to do. He got manipulated by a bunch of crafty people. So next week, in tandem with me and a couple of other things, the McCord Museum is opening an excellent exhibition on the 50th anniversary of the Olympics. I urge you to go because they've got uniforms and all kinds of things and videos, wonderful about a prideful moment 2 weeks in 1976. So that's at the as I say, at the McCord Museum. My favorite museum, well, of course, they have 6,000 of my original drawings, so I guess it's my favorite museum. So that's the book. And there's also a hardcover edition, and I'll tell you why. As I mentioned, I self-published this book. I supply bookstores, but in fact, I'd rather you just order the book from me because as opposed to a bookstore taking 45%, they take it out of a box, they put it out on the shelf, and they get 45%. And they're good bookstores. I mean, I support Paragraph and Clio on the West Island, really good, great bookstores. But nevertheless, I sell as many as I can online myself because that allows me to give the 45% to the bookstore, or a good percentage of it, to the hospital. And I've made enough money in my old age, so why not give some of it away and do some good? Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. You can get a signed book there.